DETV News is powered by DART, Delaware's transit service. Moving forward.
Tonight, it's presidential primary season, but not here in Delaware. Plus, first responders had a busy afternoon with 3 serious car crashes in the span of an hour. And get your tickets now for Delaware's fanciest event. Those stories and much more straight ahead tonight on DETV News. Hello and welcome to this DETV News Brief. I'm Matt Ford. Thanks so much for being with us tonight. Making headlines today, the Delaware Department of Elections has canceled the upcoming presidential primary election that was scheduled for April 2nd. President Joe Biden was the only candidate to file for the Democratic presidential primary, erasing the need for an election. On the Republican side, presidential primary candidate Nikki Haley terminated her campaign on March 6, leaving just Donald Trump on the ballot and eliminating the need to vote. Delaware has a number of other political races in 2024, including governor and U.S. Senate. The primary for those seats is September 10th. And speaking of politics, roughly 60 business leaders gathered here at our DETV studios Thursday morning for the It's All About Business Candidate Forum. Sponsored by the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce, the event featured 2 candidates vying for a seat in the U.S. House of Representatives. State Senator Sarah McBride said her endorsement by both the moderates and progressives in the U.S. House Democratic Caucus demonstrates her ability to fight for Delaware in Congress, whether it be legal or business communities.
We can't fund the critical services that vulnerable Delawareans rely on if we don't maintain Delaware's preeminence in the legal community, particularly when it comes to corporate and bankruptcy law.
And Eugene Young, until recently the director of the Delaware Housing Authority, said his background in housing and criminal justice enabled him to work with people from all walks and political sides.
For me, it's not as much about the party as who I'm representing, running to represent all of Delaware. It's not Democrats, not Republican, not just independent. It is all of Delaware. And for me, it's that having that background of working with everyone in order to get things done.
Candidates were interviewed separately and given the same list of questions about legislative and tax policy, healthcare, the environment, and other issues of interest to business leaders. The event was taped and aired this afternoon on Channel 28 and DETV social media platforms. Stay tuned. The forum will be rebroadcast directly following this newscast. And Delaware lawmakers are addressing rising hospital costs with a proposed review board. House Bill 350, sponsored by House Speaker Valerie Longhurst, a Bear Democrat, would establish the 5-member Diamond State Hospital Cost Review Board. Under the proposal, hospitals would be required to submit their proposed annual budgets and the bills they charge. Board members would be appointed by the governor and the General Assembly and would be knowledgeable about health care and business. Until the board begins operations, hospitals would be prohibited from charging more than 250% of Medicare costs to any payer for hospital services in the year 2025. Turning to other news now, a 25-year-old Wilmington man has pled guilty to the January 2015 murder of 16-year-old Jordan Ellerby and now faces a minimum of 15 years in prison. Oliver Butter Henry was indicted after a lengthy investigation by Wilmington Police and the Department of Justice. Ellerby's shooting ignited a rapidly accelerating feud between 2 rival gangs. And in the months and years following his death, a vicious cycle of gun violence and retaliation led to multiple shootings and murders, including the broad daylight murder of 15-year-old Brandon Wingo. The crimes resulted in dozens of arrests. According to the DOJ, the state will recommend a 20-year sentence for Henry. And 3 separate serious crashes occurred within an hour of each other on Wednesday afternoon, leaving 1 man dead. Just after 3 p.m., a 71-year-old man crashed his motorcycle on Summit Bridge Road in the area of Bethel Church Road. He was flown to Christiana Hospital in stable condition. Less than 1 hour later, a 24-year-old Claymont man died when his motorcycle hit the side of a horse trailer on Limestone Road at Terry Lane in Stanton. The third wreck happened just minutes later on Hamburg Road, west of River Road. A 70-year-old woman was trapped in the wreckage of her vehicle following a head-on crash. She was also flown to Christiana Hospital, and at last check, she was listed in critical condition. Delaware State Police are investigating all three of these accidents from today. To Sussex County now, where marijuana use is now legal in Delaware, it comes with public use restrictions and age limits. Users must be 21 years of age or older, and using marijuana in public places is prohibited. Now, the town of Dewey Beach is looking to make an ordinance to adjust its town code. The town is considering reducing a $200 fine for underage use to $100, aligning it more closely with state penalties. Dewey Beach enforces similar regulations for alcohol and marijuana use, requiring that both comply with the law and be conducted respectfully within the community. Town commissioners will further discuss this ordinance this Friday at 3 p.m. at its regularly scheduled meeting. Staying in Sussex County now, a $5,000 reward is being offered for information on the shooting death of Laurel High School student Kylie Robinson. Delaware Crime Stoppers is offering the cash for information that leads to an arrest in the October shooting. Investigators say two suspects shot 13-year-old Robinson and a 15-year-old on the porch of a home on West 7th Street in Laurel. Information can be submitted anonymously to the Delaware Crime Stoppers by calling 800-847-3333 or texting keyword to crimes. And a former doctor convicted of several federal drug offenses tied to his Milford pain clinic has had his sentence reduced from 20 to 13 years in a resentencing hearing that happened Wednesday. In 2022, Patrick Titus was convicted of 13 crimes, including knowingly dispensing narcotics without a legitimate medical purpose. Titus successfully appealed the sentence, arguing that prosecutors used an unfair calculation of the drugs involved in his crimes. A federal appeals court in Philadelphia found that he was fairly convicted, but that the sentence may have been unfairly impacted by that calculation. And to Dover now, where police arrested a 57-year-old man, Ricardo Weatherspoon, on robbery charges Tuesday following a late-night incident outside Bailey's Hotel and Casino. Officers responded just before midnight for reports of a robbery at Knife Point. A woman called 911 to report she was sitting in her car when an unknown man entered through the unlocked door, displayed a knife, and demanded that she hand over her purse. The victim complied and the suspect ran away. A witness also called 911 and directed officers to Weatherspoon's location. That's according to police. He was apprehended and charged with first-degree robbery, possession of a deadly weapon during a commission of a felony, and possession of a deadly weapon by a person prohibited. He was taken to jail on a $42,000 cash bail. And a 24-year-old Elkton, Maryland woman was arrested by Dover police Wednesday for allegedly giving a firearm to a person prohibited from possessing a gun. Courtney Hughes was arrested after 19-year-old Khalil Smith was arrested with a 9mm handgun. The department's Drugs, Vice, and Organized Crime Unit collaborated with the Federal Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms in an investigation into how Smith obtained the weapon. Investigators say Hughes brought the gun for Smith, making false statements to do so. She was released on an unsecured bond with several charges against her. And Delaware State Police are also investigating a robbery that happened Tuesday evening in Camden, during which 2 teens were robbed by a group of 5 male suspects. The incident happened on the 4000 block of South State Street just before 6 p.m. Police say the teens were walking when they were approached and attacked by the group. Both teens were injured during the attack and were taken to a nearby hospital for non-life-threatening injuries. The Troop 3 Criminal Investigations Unit is leading this investigation. Detectives are currently seeking any leads or information from the public. And Wilmington police have made an arrest in a shooting earlier this month. 22-year-old Sean Keys has been charged with the March 3rd shooting of a 27-year-old man on North Adams Street. 4 handguns were recovered during the arrest, said police. Keys was being held at Howard R. Young Correctional Institution on just over $160,000 bail. He is charged with assault, possession of a firearm, during a commission of a felony, discharging a firearm on a city street, and possession of a firearm by a person prohibited.
Good evening, DETV fam. I'm Shakira Denise, here to provide you with the latest weekend weather forecast and some exciting events happening in our city this weekend. Let's start with the weather. On Feel Good Friday, we're starting off with pleasant temperatures. We're expecting a high of 67 degrees with some light rain during the day, so be sure to have an umbrella handy. Temperatures will cool down in the evening to around 46 degrees, so you may need a light jacket or a sweater. But don't worry, because Saturday and Sunday are shaping up to be fantastic days. We're looking at partly sunny skies with a high of 64 degrees on both days. It's perfect weather if you're the active type, so get out there and do some running, hiking, and maybe even biking. Now, let's talk about some events happening right here in our city. Friday night at 7 p.m., head over to the Chase Fieldhouse for Marvel Superhero Night with our very own Delaware Bluecoats. Dress up as your favorite Marvel character and enjoy the game while supporting a great cause. Ticket prices include a donation to the YMCA of Delaware. Now on Saturday, don't miss Miss Choice Drag It's Britney Brunch at the Queen at 11:30 a.m. It's sure to be an entertaining time, and especially if you're a Britney Spears fan. And wrapping up the pleasant weekend on Sunday, we celebrate St. Patrick's Day, hence the green, at the Brandywine Zoo. Wear your green and enjoy a day filled with activities like a scavenger hunt, animal trivia for the kids, raffles, and of course, spending time with the animals. It's sure to be a great family fun day. So get out there and enjoy the great weather and these fantastic events. Stay safe, be well, and have a wonderful weekend. Back to you, Matt.
Thanks, Shakira. Spring is literally just a couple days away. And speaking of hoping for nice weather, tickets are now available for the point-to-point steeplechase horse races at Winterthur on Sunday, May 5th. The 46th annual event features riders and horses on the National Steeplechase Association. What began as a small group of horse riders and picnickers in 1979 has bloomed into an extravagant affair with elegant fashion, hats, and tailgating. Tailgating parking spaces start at $300 and tailgating tents start at $750. Both include 4 adult guest wristbands. Extra tailgate wristbands are available for $60. 30 under 21 and children under 10 are free. That's good. Point to Point is Winterthur's largest single-day fundraising event. Proceeds from this year's event support environmental and landscape stewardship initiatives. So Shakira, have you been to Point before?
I have not.
Have you not? I haven't been either.
So we're going to go.
Yeah, it's a date.
There you go. See,
all right, it's a date.
We're here.
I need to step up my suit game, I feel like.
Yeah, and I'm going to get a fascinator.
A fascinator.
I think that'll be cute.
All right. So we gotta go shopping probably pretty soon.
There you go.
All right,
it's all
we'll
on
do
you.
that. On me. Did you hear that?
That's right.
Well, that's going to do it for tonight's edition of DETV News. Be sure to follow us across all of your favorite social media platforms.
And for a look at what's happening around Delaware, take a look at our website at detvch.com.
That's right. For all of us here at DETV News, I'm Matt Ford.
And I'm Shakira Denise. We'll see you next week.
Have a good night.
Government doesn't make a move without an agenda, some type of plan. The problem is we haven't been on the agenda. Sometimes we're overlooked. Sometimes our interests aren't the interest of those in power. I'm your host, Kerwin Gaines, on DETV's new show, The Agenda. We're going to do our best to ensure that you, Delawareans, are knowledgeable about what's going on in the Assembly, federal government, local government, it doesn't matter. We're going to do our best to ensure that folks that make the agenda on a daily basis have to answer for it. Let them explain what they're doing. If it affects you, it's on the agenda.
morning, everyone. I'm Mike Quaranta. I'm president of the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce. It's my pleasure today to be joined by the good folks here at DETV and our state chamber members to bring you It's All About Business candidate question and answer session. Today, we'll ask two candidates for the U.S. House of Representatives a series of business questions. We anticipate hosting other forums in the future, so please watch for news and watch for our reporting of those upcoming events. The candidates have been given topics ahead of time, and they've not been given the specific questions. And the candidates will appear separately so that not one candidate has the answers from the other opponent. Finally, each candidate will be asked the exact same questions in the exact same order and given the same amount of time to respond to each. Those are the ground rules for our session this morning. So with that, let's introduce Sarah McBride, and you have 1 minute to introduce yourself. Sarah, welcome.
Well, thank you so much, Mike, for bringing us together. Thank you so much, Ivan and the team at DETV for hosting this forum. And of course, thank you so much to the members of the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce for taking time out of your busy days. It is great to be in this room with so many leaders in Delaware's economy, so many people who I have had the chance to partner with during my time in the Delaware State Senate. My name is Sarah McBride. I represent the 1st State Senate District, and I'm a Democrat running for the United States House of Representatives. I am running for Congress because right now, Mike, I think this country is facing a crisis of hope. It's a crisis of hope rooted in the fear that we no longer have the capacity to come together to tackle the challenges of this moment. And I believe that in order to solve that crisis of hope for our country, we have to elect people to federal office who know how to bring people together, roll up their sleeves, dive into the details, reach compromise where necessary, and deliver real and tangible results. That's what I've done in the Delaware State Senate, working with the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce to pass paid family and medical leave with a bipartisan supermajority and a coalition of groups ranging from the AFL-CIO to the state chamber in support of that legislation that makes Delaware more compassionate and more competitive. But I haven't stopped there. I've worked with industry leaders in healthcare to bring down costs facing patients and to recruit more providers to Delaware. I've worked with educators to improve early literacy in this state. I've worked to make green technologies more accessible and available for consumers. But at the end of the day, if we want to truly meet the needs of our neighbors, if we want to build a modern economy that serves all of us here in this state, we need federal action, we need federal investment. But to do that, we need leaders who have a proven record of getting things done. That's how we deliver for Delaware, and it's how we solve that crisis of hope.
Very good. Well, thank you for that. Thank you. Okay, well, here we go. So, question number 1. Congress plays a critical role in expanding economic opportunity for American business. In running for Congress, please list 3 legislative priorities you believe will benefit the American business community, and take a minute and a half.
Sure. Well, I think the first issue that I have been focused on throughout my time in the state Senate that I really hope to champion in the United States House of Representatives is modernizing our care infrastructure. Because the reality is today we have a 1950s care infrastructure for a 2024 workforce. And if we want to truly tap the potential for people across our society, people of every gender in our society, we've got to make sure that families have the resources and support necessary to not just take care of their kids, but to be able to take care of their kids and go back to work. That's why I've been championing early childhood education, working with business leaders here in Delaware and colleagues in the legislature to expand access to our state's purchase of care program. But the reality is that to actually guarantee affordable childcare for every family, absent new revenue here in Delaware, we're going to need federal action to provide states the resources necessary to ensure affordable childcare and ultimately universal pre-K for every family in this state. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, I think at the end of the day, Delaware is at a critical inflection point in our economy. We just saw the sale of Discover to Capital One. It's the end of an era that we have really benefited from in this state. And so we have to figure out what our next economic chapter is. I think Delaware is poised to take some of our legacy industries and transform them into new modern industries that are able to grow. So I think we need regulatory reforms at the federal level to ensure that Delaware is able to, for instance, be that space for innovation on fintech that we can be, but currently federal guidelines and federal rules limit our capacity. The third thing I'll say.
Sorry, I got to cut you off.
Okay.
I got to cut you off. Okay, so what are your views on legal reform, especially policies related to tort, class action lawsuits, the use of arbitration agreements, and mass tort litigation? You have 1 minute.
Well, so, this is always a challenge. Mike and I spent hundreds of hours actually on Zooms pretty much with stakeholders on paid leave, and it's hard to keep me short. But I will say on the issue of arbitration, we've seen the overuse of restrictive covenants in employment decisions, restrictive covenants that have resulted in the limitation of employees to go off and go to a different employer in that same industry or start a new business in that same industry. So I think we do need to rein in some of the use of forced arbitration in the context of a larger reform of restrictive covenants. I do believe in our civil justice system. I think Delaware has struck a strong balance. And I want to make sure that we maintain access to the civil justice system, because I do think that is the system, that is the court system in our judiciary that provides the most equitable justice for the powerful and the vulnerable.
Very good, thank you. Thinking about healthcare now and expanding access to care while increasing affordability, I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Please respond in favor or oppose, and then take 30 seconds after each to explain your view, if you would, please. The first one, protecting, remember, please indicate if you favor or oppose. Protecting the exclusion that allows employers to offer and subsidize coverage to their employees and dependents on a pre-tax basis. Favor or oppose?
I favor maintaining that capacity.
Okay, and you have 30 seconds if
Look,
you want to expand on that.
I think that we have a system in our society of employers being incentivized to provide good, decent benefits to their employees. I think we should maintain the current regulatory regimen, the current statutory allowance for those types of allowances.
Very good. The ability of multi-state employers to offer coverage to employees in a variety of states without having to spend money on complying with different state administrative requirements. Favor or oppose?
Well, I don't think there's a simple yes or no to that. I think we should always strive for continuity across states. I think that's one of the reasons why federal action is so important on so many of these issues, so that there isn't a patchwork of laws that are incredibly complicated to grapple with. One of the questions I always ask any kind of advocate before me in the state Senate is, how does this compare to what other states have done? What does this look like in Pennsylvania, New Jersey, and Maryland in particular? Because we know in a small state, businesses can very, very easily vote with their feet. And so we want to make sure there is as much continuity across state lines as possible.
Thank you. The next 2 questions are on tax policy. Do you support or oppose increasing the corporate income tax rate above 21%? You have 60 seconds to address that if you like.
Look, I think we should be very careful when we're talking about any kind of increase in taxes in an increasingly globalized economy. We know that, as is the case with employers here in Delaware, when we're competing with other states, increasingly the United States is competing with other countries. So we want to make sure that our tax rates are perpetually competitive to maintain jobs and to maintain businesses here in the United States. I do think we also need to make sure that we have the revenue to fund government services, and we shouldn't do it on the backs of middle-class people. But I think we always have to make sure we're being competitive and thoughtful about what those rates are.
Okay. Do you support or oppose the enactment of an annual wealth tax or any other tax on unrealized gains?
Look, I think a tax system where Warren Buffett is paying a lower tax rate than his secretary is a tax system that needs to be looked at and reformed and simplified. So I do think that there are reasonable common sense reforms to taxes on capital gains, for instance, on extreme wealth. But again, I think we always have to be careful. My approach to public policy is we need to make sure that we address the problem that we're trying to address with a scalpel and not a sledgehammer, because we know when that sledgehammer is used, it has unintended consequences. And I think the same is true when it comes to these types of questions around tax reform.
Okay. Here's a maritime transportation question. Today, an estimated 90% of the world's goods are transported by sea, including virtually all imported fruits, gadgets, and appliances, are packed in large steel containers. What grants, appropriations, and environmental policies will you favorably endorse, if any, in support of Delaware waterways and the Port of Wilmington in particular?
Sure. So we obviously have a gem in the port right here in Wilmington, and there's an opportunity for growth in that port with Edgemoor. I think if we want to make sure that we're putting the port here in Wilmington and the possible expansion in Edgemoor on a path of success, we're going to need federal investment. And so I'll certainly work with colleagues in the federal delegation as well as state leaders here in Delaware and colleagues in the executive branch of the federal government to secure resources here to Delaware to make sure that our waterways are clean and to make sure that particularly the port has the resources necessary to be on a long-term path of financial and fiscal success, because that is a critical source of not only good-paying jobs but good-paying union jobs here in Delaware. And we've got to leverage federal funds to keep that facility in operation in the long term and to reap the benefits of an expansion at Edgemoor.
Thank you. Here's a question on bipartisanship. Name, as you identified earlier in your opening, you're a Democrat. Name a piece of bipartisan business legislation or industrial policy authored by the Republican Party that you would support. You got 30 seconds.
Sure. Well, look, I think the reality is that we've seen a number of accomplishments over the last several years where we have seen important bipartisan collaboration at the federal level, whether that's the bipartisan infrastructure deal, whether that's the CHIPS and Sciences Act. There's also legislation at the federal level around reforming the use of restrictive covenants sponsored by Marco Rubio that I support to make sure that we unleash the potential of entrepreneurship in our society. I'm proud in the Delaware State Senate that I have passed dozens of bills, all but one have passed with bipartisan majorities. And that's not just technical cleanup bills. That is real meaningful policy like paid family and medical leave, healthcare policy, media literacy, green technologies that we've been able to pass with bipartisan majorities. I'll operate the same way in Congress.
Thank you. On the subject of immigration, the current statutory quotas and eligibility criteria on the many legal immigration options for businesses, those haven't changed since 1990. This has left companies of all sizes struggling to meet their workforce needs for several years. Would you vote to increase, decrease, or maintain the 1990 quotas? You have 1 minute.
I would vote to increase those quotas. We know how important it is for us to be able to maintain the United States' capacity as a beacon for opportunity while also filling the jobs that we have here in the United States that we need to fill, that we can only do if we make sure that we're both tapping the talent of people who live here already and also inviting people to come to our shores to work here or to stay here after they've been educated here. So I would support increasing, for instance, H-1B visas and other kinds of occupational visas that the United States offers so that we can more fully fill the jobs that we have, tap the talent that we need to tap. And that's one of the reasons why here in the state Senate, I passed with unanimous bipartisan support legislation that opens up occupational licensure to undocumented workers here in Delaware, people who we've educated in our public schools, educated at schools like DSU, who were barred from accessing jobs like being a teacher or a nurse or a doctor. We passed legislation opening up those occupations to undocumented workers who are otherwise qualified.
Thank you. The Delaware Chancery Court, our incorporation statutes in particular, and the resulting Delaware franchise tax is an important component of the state's revenue stream. The Working Families Party, Securities and Exchange Commission, Senator Cornyn, Senator Elizabeth Warren have been advocates of reform measures that would damage Delaware's standing. Would you be willing to defend against these reform efforts, even if your own party's caucus, and even against maybe the interests of your own party's administration? What's your view on all that? And take 1 minute, please.
Sure. I'm Delaware's member of Congress if I am so lucky to be elected. That means defending Delaware's economy. And we are sitting right here in the heart of Delaware's legal community, which drives so much of Wilmington's economy and so much of our state's economy. As you mentioned, it also results in a significant amount of revenue for state government. So yes, I would defend Delaware's legal community, the incredible chancery court that we have here, corporate governance that has been the hallmark of Delaware's legal community for really centuries at this point. And one of the things I'm proud of is that in this campaign, I've been endorsed by the two major ideological caucuses in the U.S. House Democratic Caucus, both the moderate New Dems and the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Congresswoman Blunt Rochester is a member of both. Being in both of those spaces, having the support and being in conversation with both moderates and progressives will ensure that I can bring Delaware's voice and Delaware's interests to the table and help to defend, yes, corporate governance here in Delaware, yes, our Chancery Court, yes, the federal definition of domicile so that we maintain bankruptcy law in this state. We can't fund the critical services that vulnerable Delawareans rely on if we don't maintain Delaware's preeminence in the legal community, particularly when it comes to corporate and bankruptcy law.
Thank you. So thank you very much for appearing before the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce this morning. And today, again, we appreciate you being here with all of us on DETV. You've got another minute to wrap up if you like, but thank you for sharing your views this morning. Take another minute in closing, please.
Thank you so much. Well, first off, again, thank you so much, Mike, and the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce and DETV for hosting me here today, hosting all of us here today. I look forward to continuing this conversation with Delaware's business leaders, just as I've done over the course of my time in the Delaware State Senate, working collaboratively to address the issues impacting Delaware's economy, our workers, and our families. At the end of the day, if we are going to solve issues, if we are going to address the challenges that Delaware face, we have to work across the political divide. And I'm proud, as I mentioned, that I have introduced and passed dozens of bills in the Delaware General Assembly. Almost all of them have passed with bipartisan majorities. I want to make sure that we have a politics that brings people together in order to move forward. And that's what I hope to bring to the United States House of Representatives, and I hope to earn your support and the support of folks watching in that effort.
Thank you very much. Let us thank our candidate for appearing this morning, and that concludes this first session.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
DETV has been Delaware's premium provider of creative digital and broadcasting solutions that bridges communities and connects people. We create great stories for all audiences. We deliver independent news throughout Delaware. We are digital platform innovators. And we develop marketing and sales solutions so you can stay connected to your audience. Now, why do we do what we do here on DETV? We do it because we care. So, keep watching and follow us on all of our social media platforms. Remember, DETV, online, on air, on time.
Delaware offers abundant opportunities for emerging talent to launch their careers. But do they also know how it's a perfect place to live, work, and play? And that's why Intern Delaware was created, to keep talent in the first state. This 2-month add-on program provides your summer interns with access to events and networking opportunities designed to help them understand the unique aspects of the first state. Help us shape the future of Delaware's workforce today.
Government doesn't make a move without an agenda, some type of plan. The problem is we haven't been on the agenda. Sometimes we're overlooked. Sometimes our interests aren't the interests of those in power. I'm your host, Kerwin Gaines, on DETV's new show, The Agenda. We're going to do our best to ensure that you, Delawareans, are knowledgeable about what's going on in the Assembly. Federal government, local government, it doesn't matter. We're going to do our best to ensure that folks that make the agenda on a daily basis have to answer for it. Let them explain what they're doing. If it affects you, it's on the agenda.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Mike Quaranta, and I'm president of the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce, and it's my pleasure today to be joined by the good folks here at DETV and our state chamber members. We're going to host a candidate question and answer session called It's All About Business, And today we've got our candidates for the U.S. House of Representatives. We're going to ask business-related questions. We anticipate hosting other forums in the future, so please watch our website and the news for those upcoming forums. The candidates have been given the topics ahead of time, but not the specific questions. And the candidates will appear separately, so one cannot use answers from their opponent. Finally, each candidate will be asked the exact same questions in the exact same order and given the same amount of time to respond to each. Those are the ground rules, and with that, let me introduce Eugene Young and ask you to take 1 minute to introduce yourself.
All right. Good morning, Mike. Good morning, everyone here in this great room, everyone on TV or DETV for that matter. I want to thank the Chamber, DETV, certainly for having me here. My name is Eugene Young, and I'm running for Congress. My background, as we come here today and talk about small business, my background is in small business. Starting one over 20 years ago with two good friends. And from there has been a progression of different nonprofit, different organizations as of last week, my previous job is running the Delaware State Housing Authority, focusing on issues of probably the greatest issue of housing in our state. But having to deal with some of the same issues around trying to hire a quality workforce, higher healthcare cost, a variety of issues, budgets, deadlines, and things of that nature. And so it brings me to this moment here to talk to the State Chamber and talk with you all about what's so important when it comes to small businesses in our state. I'm incredibly thankful to be here, very much looking for the opportunity.
Fantastic. Okay, so here we go. Question number one. Congress plays a critical role in expanding economic opportunity for Americans. In running for Congress, please list 3 legislative priorities you believe will benefit the American business community. You have 1.5 minutes.
Oh, 3 and a minute and a half. No, I would say the first one is housing. It has to be the greatest priority, not just for our state, for our nation as a whole. We are our nation is behind around 4 to 6 million units. Our state is behind 21,000 units. We need to get more units up and available. What's also very important is the fact that more people are moving to our state now than ever before. We're in the top 10 importing states in the country. So people are moving here by the droves. And what's happening is we do not have enough units for the people that are coming. In addition to housing, I would say healthcare, focusing on the fact that we have rising costs with healthcare, in particular prescription drugs, making sure that we're able to help small businesses thrive. And part of that is by making sure there's healthcare, quality healthcare available for their families. You know, many times I hear that line, behind every successful small business is a spouse with good health insurance. Like, these are things that I commonly hear. And then third is on the economic development piece is training up our workforce to meet the needs of today. We have amazing people in our state. We have a lot of need in our state. Even looping back to what I was saying earlier, we're behind 21,000 units. We're going to need skilled electricians, HVACs, plumbers in order to do this work. We have, our state is high on the number of PhDs per capita, but we also have to focus on the workforce as well.
Okay, very good. So thank you for that. So what are your views on legal reform, especially policies related to class action suits, the use of arbitration agreements, and mass tort litigation? You have 1 minute.
Yes, so when it comes to that, first let's be clear, our Chancery Court is to be envied in the nation. When it comes to a lot of regulations, I think it's important that we're not onerous. And we, as a congressperson, not pushing to legislation that ends up hurting our state in the long run. And so for me, I am very much understanding where our bread is buttered when it comes to the work that we do here in our state. And I think it's about protecting, as our current delegation is currently doing right now and has done over the past.
Thank you. Thinking about healthcare now and expanding access to care while increasing affordability. I'm going to ask you 2 questions. Yeah. Please respond in favor or oppose and take 30 seconds after each to explain your views if you like. Remember, please indicate if you favor or oppose the following. Number 1, protecting the exclusion that allows employers to offer and subsidize coverage to their employees and dependents on a pre-tax basis. Favor or oppose?
Say it one more time. Just
Sure. Protecting the exclusion that allows employers to offer and subsidize coverage to their employees and dependents on a pre-tax basis. Favor or oppose?
The exclusion, I favor.
Okay. You're welcome to elaborate if you like.
So for me, it is about providing that quality healthcare for the people of our workers, our employees, making sure they have quality healthcare for their families. It's very simple with me when it comes to that.
Okay. Second question, the ability of multi-state employers to offer coverage to employees in a variety of states without having to spend money on complying with different states' administrative requirements.
Favor.
Okay. You're welcome to elaborate if you like.
Yes, we have to be able to shop across borders. I think it's competitive. It helps us in driving costs down. I think it's just critically important as we move forward. So absolutely.
Thank you. Okay. The next two questions are on tax policy. Do you support or oppose increasing the corporate income tax rate above 21%? You have 60 seconds to discuss your view if you like.
So I agree with our president that has said multiple times that it's not, since the Trump tax cuts that have brought it from 35% to 21%, I think it is important to make sure, because even at the effective rate, it becomes in many cases 10, 9, 8, so on and so forth. President Biden has put together a proposal for around 15% minimum. I think that is fair. I believe that is something that we're able to make sure everyone, even as he said, we are understanding where our bread is buttered and how we are made up as a state when it comes to corporations. We have to make sure that we understand and we're supportive of the corporations that employ so many people in our state, but we must also ensure the fact that everyone pays their fair share. So I would support the 21, but keeping a minimum percentage as well.
Okay. Do you support or oppose the enactment of an annual wealth tax or any other tax on unrealized gains? Again, you have 60 seconds.
I would support a tax, and it goes back to this aspect of making sure that we're able to have a fair system so that everyone's paying in properly and everyone's being able to contribute. And there are many that contribute already, but making sure that it's fair across the board for everyone.
Okay. Here's a maritime transportation question. Today, an estimated 90% of the world's goods are transported by sea, with 60% of that, including virtually all of your imported fruits, gadgets, and appliances, packed in large steel containers. What grants, appropriations, and environmental policies will you favorably endorse, if any, in support of the Delaware waterways and the Port of Wilmington in particular? And you have a minute.
So I would say first thing is, one thing that we've learned from COVID is that we are so reliant on other countries, China, others around the globe. I think recently the president's very much focused on this aspect of nearshoring, bringing our logistics a lot closer in a sense. And also, for me, it would also be about, when we speak of our port, advocating, going out, meeting with other countries, making sure that we're able to make those important connections so that we're able to get more support in and have mutual relationships with many of these different companies from around the globe. But for me, it all starts with making sure that we are America first in regards to our supplies, building and creating here, nearshoring so that we're not overextending ourselves, as we recently saw with COVID, and also supporting our port and other spaces here as well.
Very good, thank you. Here's a question about bipartisanship. I know you're a candidate for the Democratic nomination for the U.S. House of Representatives.
Yes.
Name a piece of business legislation or an industrial policy authored by the Republican Party that you would support. You have 1 minute.
Well, we've come together. I've worked with the Republican Party on a variety of projects throughout, not just even now in housing, but over the years, working in my criminal justice background with a right-leaning group called Right on Crime, or whether it's currently now there's different housing potential projects that are going on that have been brought up by Republicans and Democrats, or if it's the bipartisan immigration bill. These are all things that I would support. It's not, for me, it's not as much about the party as I'm running to represent all of Delaware. It's not Democrats, not Republican, not just independent, it is all of Delaware. And for me, it's that having that background of working with everyone in order to get things done.
Okay. On the subject of immigration, current statutory quotas and eligibility criteria on the many legal immigration options for businesses haven't changed since 1990.
Correct.
This has left companies of all sizes struggling to meet their workforce needs for many years. Would you vote to increase, decrease, or maintain the 1990 quota levels? You have 1 minute.
When it comes to immigration, I think the first thing we have to do is make sure our borders are secure. First, foremost, point blank. Second is we need to make sure that Border Patrol has more funding to enforce. And then third, we need to make sure there's proper funding to make sure that the judicial process for the asylum seekers is not so backlogged as it is currently right now. In addition, specifically to your question, I think I would maintain, but I would say we need to specifically focus in on tighten up where we have right now, just because you cannot be a sovereign nation if you don't have a border. And so being very firm in regards to what we're doing, the people that are coming in right now, the process that we have for people coming in right now, and then we can have deeper conversations around expansion and so on and so forth.
Okay. The Delaware Chancery Court, our incorporation statutes in particular, and the resulting Delaware franchise tax is an important component of state revenue streams.
Absolutely.
The Working Families Party, Securities and Exchange Commission, Senator Cornyn, and Senator Elizabeth Warren have been advocates of reform measures that would damage Delaware's standing. Mm-hmm. Will you be willing to defend against these reform efforts, even in your own party's caucus, and even against the interests of your own party's administration? You have 1 minute.
Our Chancery Court is what makes us unique from the 49 other states. And it must be defended. Our delegation has done a great job in defending what we have here, and I will continue to do so, point blank, period.
Very good. Thank you very much for appearing before the Delaware State Chamber of Commerce today and here on DETV. We appreciate your time and desire to serve in Congress. You have 1 minute to wrap up, Eugene.
I just want to say thank you, Mike. Thank you, DETV. Thank you all for being here. I would just close by saying this, small businesses are the backbone, just businesses, period, are the backbone to our state. I oftentimes talk about this aspect of roots versus routes. It's our ROOTS, our roots. It's the type of healthcare we get, it's the type of job we're able to have, it's the type of community that we live in that determines our routes, our ROUTES, where we're able to go in life, the work that we're able to do, the quality lives we're able to have for our families. And I would just like to thank you all for strengthening, working with small businesses, larger, everyone alike, in order to strengthen those roots for so many families, so many people that want to start their business, want to be involved and engaged in the process, and helping them to establish those routes. So thank you all for being here. I had a wonderful time.
Great, thank you. Let's show a sign of thanks to Eugene.
Thank you so much, Mike.
Appreciate it.